My name is Lauren Hart, and if you're listening to this, don't scroll away, because what I'm about to share isn't just my story. It's something that happens quietly in homes, in offices, and in relationships that look perfect from the outside. It's the kind of story that starts with warmth and ends with silence, where you wake up one day and realize you've been apologizing for existing in someone else's world. I'm sitting in an airport lounge that smells like burnt coffee and cleaning chemicals. The light is too sharp, the air too still, and my phone keeps lighting up with messages from a man who once said he couldn't live without me. I used to believe that meant love. Now I know it meant control. For 3 years, I tried to make peace with the tension that never left the room, telling myself that real relationships take effort, that patience was proof of strength. But love isn't supposed to feel like walking on glass. It's not supposed to make you shrink just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. This isn't a breakup story. It's about how emotional neglect disguises itself as normalcy, how manipulation wears the mask of care, and how sometimes the person breaking you apart is the one asking if you're okay. My name is Lauren Hart, and I'm 31 years old. I'm sitting in an airport lounge that feels too clean for the kind of mess inside my head. The speakers hum with distant flight announcements, but I barely hear them. My phone hasn't stopped vibrating for the last 10 minutes. Screen flashing over and over with the same name, Ethan Ross. 3 years together. And suddenly I know what those years really meant. Not love, not partnership, not even comfort, just survival, disguised as devotion. When people talk about emotional abuse, they imagine shouting, chaos, dramatic exits. But it doesn't always sound like that. Sometimes, it sounds like laughter from the other room, or the faint click of a message being typed to someone who isn't you. It's quiet, polite, easy to explain away. It hides behind sentences like, "Don't take it personally," or "You're overthinking it." That's how it started with Ethan. Not in storms, but in stillness. We met at a rooftop party in Seattle. He had that effortless kind of charm that made people turn toward him when he spoke. Confident, gentle, charismatic in a way that didn't seem threatening. The kind of person who made you feel like you were being seen for the first time. I remember thinking how safe his voice sounded, how he asked questions that made me feel interesting. Looking back, I realized he didn't want to know me. He wanted to study me. Within months, we were inseparable. He'd bring me coffee in bed, send random texts saying he missed me, and insist on walking me home, even when it was just 2 blocks away. It all looked like love, and maybe in the beginning it was. But love shouldn't come with an invisible checklist. Ethan wanted to be in every detail of my life. What I wore, who I had lunch with, what I posted online. It didn't happen overnight. It crept in slowly, disguised as care. He'd say things like, "I just want to know you're safe," or, "You don't need to hang out with them. They don't really get you like I do." At first, I thought it was protective. Later, I understood it was possession. The worst part wasn't that I didn't notice. It's that I did, and I still stayed. Because when someone makes you feel like they're your world, you start believing that leaving means losing oxygen. The first real crack showed up about a year into the relationship. We had just moved into a small apartment together, the kind of place with creaky floors and a stubborn heater. I was working late nights on a marketing project, and Ethan would complain that I wasn't present enough. I told him I was just tired. He laughed, said I was too sensitive, kissed my forehead, and told me to relax. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed afterward, wondering how love could make me feel so small. It's strange how control can sound like kindness when it's dressed in the right tone. He wasn't cruel, not in a way anyone else could see. In public, he was the perfect boyfriend. Attentive, supportive, affectionate. He'd hold my hand and smile at everyone, like we were the definition of happiness. But behind closed doors, happiness became performance. If I didn't laugh at the right time, he'd go quiet. If I questioned something, he'd sigh and say, Why do you always look for problems? That question became my entire relationship. Me defending, him dismissing. One evening, we were watching a movie, and his phone buzzed. I didn't mean to look, but I saw the name light up, Jenna Lewis. I remembered her. She was his ex, the one he swore he had no feelings for, the one he still talked to sometimes as a friend. I asked casually who it was. He smiled, said, "Oh, Jenna. You know, she's just funny sometimes." The words were harmless, but the way his smile lingered wasn't. I told myself not to make it a big deal. He'd always told me that trust mattered, that insecurity killed relationships. So I said nothing. But that night, when I reached for him, he was cold, distracted. He said he was tired. The next morning, I saw him texting again, smiling at his screen. I remember the coffee burning my tongue as I forced a smile of my own. Love shouldn't feel like guessing games. It shouldn't feel like trying to read someone's silence. But when you're inside it, you start normalizing the ache. You convince yourself this is what mature relationships look like. Compromises, patience, understanding. You tell yourself no one's perfect. And you start lowering the bar every time they make you feel like you're asking for too much. By the second year, I had stopped asking entirely. I avoided confrontation because every argument ended the same way. Me apologizing for how I felt. He had a way of making my emotions seem inconvenient, like they were proof of my instability. He'd say things like, "You always twist everything," or "You make drama out of nothing." And eventually, I started believing him. When you're gaslighted long enough, you start doubting your own memory. You question whether you're overreacting or misremembering. You start editing yourself before you even speak. That's what emotional neglect really is. Not absence, but indifference dressed up as logic. By the third year, I could tell when he was annoyed just by the way he placed his keys on the counter. Every gesture had meaning. Every silence had weight. And still, I smiled. Because smiling meant safety. Smiling meant peace. The irony is that people like Ethan don't have to break you loudly. They just keep you confused long enough for you to break yourself. That's the thing about modern love stories. Everyone posts the highlights, but no one sees the moments when you start disappearing quietly, piece by piece, in your own home. And by the time I realized how far I'd gone, I wasn't even sure who I was trying to save anymore. Him, or the version of me who still believed this was love. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that ghosts don't always haunt houses. Sometimes they haunt relationships. For me, her name was Jenna Lewis, Ethan's best friend, his old, flame-turned platonic miracle, the woman who somehow always found a way to float into our life at the most inconvenient times. I never met her in person during the first year, but she was everywhere. In his stories, his phone, his sentences. Jenna said this. Jenna thinks that. Jenna's the only one who really understands. He spoke about her the way people talk about nostalgia. Soft, harmless, and slightly glowing. But nostalgia can be dangerous when you start comparing it to your present. At first, I tried to be the cool girlfriend. I told myself adults have pasts, that trust means not questioning every little thing. I even suggested we invite her over sometime, just to break the invisible tension. He laughed and said, "She's busy. You'd like her though. She's down to earth." Something about the way he said it made me feel like I was being compared to a ghost. Something less real, less effortless. The first time I saw her picture, it wasn't even intentional. Ethan was cooking, his phone lit up with a notification. A photo, sunlight, a patio brunch, mimosas, a caption that read, "Missed this." I watched him smile in that quiet, nostalgic way, the kind that looks like memory, not mischief. My stomach sank, but I stayed quiet. He said it was an inside joke, and I pretended to believe him. Because in relationships like ours, Pretending became a form of survival. What's cruel about emotional neglect is how subtle it is. It doesn't hit you all at once. It starts small. You swallow one uncomfortable feeling to keep the peace, then another and another, until silence becomes your second language. You start telling yourself that jealousy is ugly, that you're overthinking. You start taking the blame for emotions that were designed to protect you. Jenna became a constant presence. She'd text him every morning, little check-ins, random thoughts, jokes. Once, I asked if it ever felt weird that they talked so much. He smiled, said, "You don't understand. She was there before life got complicated." It was such a simple sentence, but it landed like a verdict. I wasn't before, I was after. That's the thing about emotional hierarchy. It doesn't have to be spoken aloud to exist. You can feel it in the way someone prioritizes another person's comfort over your clarity. One night I asked him gently, "Do you think it's fair that you're this close to someone you once loved?" He rolled his eyes. "Not everything has to be a threat, Lauren. Jenna and I have history, sure, but not like that. Why can't you just trust me?" I remember that sentence word for word, because it became his favorite weapon. Why can't you just trust me? It wasn't a question. It was a shield. Every time I asked for honesty, he'd hide behind it. And every time, I'd back down, afraid of being labeled that kind of girlfriend. The needy one. The insecure one. The crazy one. The more I tried to express my discomfort, the more he reframed it as a flaw in me. I began analyzing my tone before speaking, replaying our arguments to see if I sounded irrational. I started apologizing for emotions I hadn't even expressed yet. He had turned communication into a trap, and I kept walking into it because I wanted to save something that was already burning down. It was a Tuesday evening when the real test came. He walked in with that kind of energy that fills a room before the person even speaks. "Guess what?" he said, holding his phone out like it carried good news. "There's this new pop-up event in wine country. Boutique hotel, tastings, pool, everything." I smiled, because that sounded like something we both needed. "That sounds amazing," I said. "When do we go?" The pause that followed was microscopic, but heavy enough to change everything. "It's not for us," he said quickly. "It's for me and Jenna. We haven't done one of our tradition trips in years." I stood there, wooden spoon in hand, watching pasta sauce form a red spiral in the pan. I kept stirring because stopping felt like surrendering. "You and Jenna," I said, careful not to sound angry. "She found the deal," he explained. "We've always done friend trips. It's not a couple thing. Don't make this weird." I wanted to scream, but instead, I heard myself say, "Then why not invite me?" His jaw tensed. "Because it's our thing. It's a tradition. Don't be that girl, Lauren. You trust me, right? Don't be that girl." The phrase sat in the air like smoke. What does that even mean? The girl who notices patterns. The girl who refuses to play blind. Or the girl who finally calls something what it is. I smiled because I had no words left that wouldn't be used against me. "Of course," I said softly. "Have fun." That night he acted like nothing had happened. He made dinner, talked about work, laughed at a show we'd seen 100 times. But the sound of his laughter made my skin crawl, because I realized for the first time, I wasn't in a relationship. I was in a story he was writing, and my role was to stay agreeable enough to keep the plot moving. After he fell asleep, I sat in the dark and looked at the ceiling. I thought about the version of love we're sold, that it's about compromise, about patience, about trust. But no one tells you what happens when patience becomes submission, when trust becomes silence. I wanted to believe I was being mature, that by staying calm, I was showing strength. But the truth is, I was terrified, not of losing him, but of proving him right, of becoming the jealous, irrational woman he said I was. So I swallowed my instinct, smiled in the morning, and told him to have fun on his trip. He kissed my forehead like he was blessing me for obedience. "This is healthy," he said. Separate activities are good for us. As he packed his bag that night, I realized I had been living in separate activities for years. Only mine were invisible, one side of the bed cold, one half of the love one-sided. And the saddest part, I still believed we were okay. Friday morning arrived with the kind of silence that doesn't belong in a home. Ethan's suitcase stood by the door, zipped perfectly, like it had been packed for days. He moved through the apartment humming under his breath, acting like we weren't pretending, like he wasn't about to leave for a trip that I wasn't allowed to exist in. He looked radiant in that sickeningly calm way people do when they're certain they've gotten away with something. His shirt was pressed, his shoes spotless, his smile soft enough to seem innocent. I watched him pick up his sunglasses from the counter and slip them on with the confidence of someone who believed he was still the good guy. "Don't wait up for me," he said, almost playfully. "We'll be back Sunday night. Jenna's already on her way to pick me up from the station." He said her name like a reassurance, as if reminding me of her made this less threatening. I just nodded, because I had run out of ways to sound understanding. "Drive safe," I said quietly. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It sounded like an echo. He kissed my forehead and said, "Don't be lonely." The door closed. The click echoed like a final verdict. For a few minutes, I just stood there, staring at the handle. The air in the apartment felt too still, like everything was holding its breath. I noticed Mr. Fern, the plant he insisted on buying when we moved in, drooping slightly, the leaves curling inward. I whispered, "Me too." I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of coffee I didn't want. The sound of the coffee maker filled the silence like static. I looked around at the space we built together. The mug we both used, the photos on the fridge, the couch that still smelled faintly like his cologne. Everything looked ordinary, but nothing felt real. I thought about all the times I had excused this, all the ways I had convinced myself that boundaries were cages and that real love meant flexibility, how I had defended his friendship to friends who raised eyebrows, saying things like, "It's fine. I trust him," while knowing deep down that I didn't. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't break. It erodes. It eats away at your sense of safety, one quiet moment at a time until the ground beneath you is gone. That's what I felt that morning. Not anger, not sadness, just absence. I opened my laptop, and for a long moment, I stared at the blank screen. Then, as if pulled by something instinctive, I searched my inbox for an old message from Noah Blake, a co-worker who'd once joked, "If you ever need an escape from work or life, I've got a resort membership collecting dust." Back then, I laughed it off. But right now, escape didn't sound like running. It sounded like remembering who I was before someone taught me to doubt myself. I found the email thread. His last message ended with a smiley face and a line that said, "Offer stands anytime." I typed, "Hey Noah, random question. Still got that resort pass. Thinking I might need a weekend away." He replied 5 minutes later, "Absolutely. 2 rooms, split cost, no drama. You okay?" "I will be." I wrote back. It wasn't a plan. Not yet. It was a signal to myself that I wasn't entirely gone. That the version of me who used to make choices, instead of excuses, still existed somewhere beneath the numbness. That night, I cooked dinner for one. I set the table anyway, out of habit. His chair looked strange, empty. I kept checking my phone, not because I was expecting him to call, but because silence had started to feel louder than noise. Around 9, my phone lit up. Ethan's name. For a moment, I almost smiled. Maybe he missed me. Maybe he wanted to apologize. The text read, "Made it here safe. Jenna forgot her charger LOL. Wine looks amazing. You'd love this place." I stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could have replied something sweet, something compliant, something he could show Jenna and say, "See, she's fine with it." Instead, I put the phone face down. People think heartbreak comes with crying. But sometimes it comes with quiet rebellion, like not replying to a text you were expected to answer. Saturday morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through the curtains. The air felt lighter, but not free. I cleaned the apartment, did laundry, watered Mr. Fern. I even smiled once. A tired, fragile smile that felt like the first breath after being underwater too long. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Instagram. Ethan had posted a photo, a wine glass in hand, the caption, "Good vibes, great company." In the reflection of the glass, I could see her, Jenna, laughing, leaning in close. My chest tightened, not because of jealousy, but because of how familiar it all looked. That same soft lighting, that same filtered happiness. I realized I'd been performing that same version of love for years. Only now I was watching it from the outside. I didn't cry. I just sat there until the sun shifted across the floor and the photo disappeared from the top of my feed. That evening, I messaged Noah again. "Still up for that trip?" He replied almost instantly, "Of course. Leave tomorrow morning?" "Yeah. I think I need to get out of here." "Then it's settled," he said. No explanations, just air. And for the first time in months, the idea of air, real, unmonitored air, didn't scare me. That night, as I packed a small bag, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked tired but certain. I realized the difference between pretending to move on and actually doing it. One requires his permission, the other doesn't. By midnight, I turned my phone to silent. His text kept lighting up the screen. Random comments, updates, photos of sunsets and wine bottles. I ignored them all. It wasn't revenge. It was relief. And somewhere between the silence of my apartment and the hum of the night, I understood something simple. If love demands your blindness, it's not love. Sunday morning arrived soft and indifferent. The kind of morning that doesn't care whether you're falling apart or finally free. I left the apartment 1 hour after Ethan's last message. "Hope your weekend's good too," he'd written, as if we were equals. I didn't respond. Outside, the city felt unfamiliar. The same streets, same air, but somehow cleaner. I walked to the curb where Noah's blue hatchback was waiting. Engine humming softly, music playing low. He stepped out, gave a small wave, and without saying much, loaded my suitcase into the trunk. "You ready?" he asked. "I think so," I said. We didn't talk about why I was going. He didn't ask. That's what I liked about Noah. He wasn't curious for entertainment. He was curious for understanding. And sometimes, that means staying quiet. As we pulled onto the highway, the city melted behind us. The sun was bright, but not warm yet. He turned on a playlist. Slow guitar, soft percussion, songs that sound like healing, but don't announce it. I leaned my head against the window, watching the reflections of passing cars blur into color. Freedom doesn't always feel loud. Sometimes it feels like air conditioning, the hum of tires, and not having to explain why your silence means peace instead of punishment. Halfway there, we stopped for iced coffee. Noah took a selfie, both of us wearing sunglasses, holding plastic cups, laughing at something small. He posted it with the caption, "Weekend escape loading." It was innocent, simple. But when the photo went live, my phone started vibrating in the cup holder. Notifications, calls, messages. Ethan's name again and again. The first few were harmless. "Where are you? Everything okay? Call me when you can." Then came the shift. "Who is that? Why are you with him? Are you serious right now?" I stared at the screen as message after message rolled in, his desperation dressed up as moral outrage. I didn't reply. The irony was heavy. The man who swore his weekend with another woman was innocent, suddenly couldn't breathe when I had my own. Noah glanced over, catching a glimpse of my screen. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. Just someone realizing what fairness feels like. He smiled faintly, then turned the volume up. Then let's drive faster. The rest of the trip was silent in the most peaceful way. We arrived at the resort during golden hour. Sunlight spilling over glass doors and warm stone paths. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and ocean salt. The woman at the desk handed me 2 keys. Separate rooms, I said without hesitation. She nodded, professional and understanding. As Noah wheeled his suitcase down the hall, he turned back and said, "Meet at the pool in 30. I'll order nachos." I laughed softly. "Make it mild. I've had enough spice for one lifetime." In my room, the air felt different. Not empty, just mine. I placed my phone on the bed, face down, and let it vibrate until it stopped. The last message from Ethan came through as I unpacked. "You're acting crazy. Call me before this gets worse." Crazy, that word. How easily it's used to chain women to someone else's comfort. I looked at my reflection in the mirror above the desk. I hadn't really seen myself in months. My eyes looked steady again, like they'd remembered how to focus. My shoulders were relaxed. My skin no longer held that permanent tension of walking on someone else's eggshells. For months, I had begged for fairness, like it was a gift. Tonight, I realized fairness isn't granted. It's reclaimed. Down by the pool, the world smelled of salt, sunscreen, and citrus. Noah waved me over from a shaded cabana. "I got the blandest salsa they had," he said, grinning. "Didn't want you suffering through emotional and physical trauma in the same day." "Appreciated," I said, sitting across from him. He handed me a drink. "To whatever this is," he said, lifting his cup. "To breathing again," I answered. As the sun dipped lower, the sky turned shades of orange and pink, folding into the horizon like it was letting go too. My phone buzzed once more, a notification lighting up the screen beside me. I didn't move. I wasn't ignoring him to hurt him. I was ignoring him to hear myself. I thought about all the women who stay too long. The ones who convince themselves that staying is noble, that loyalty means enduring discomfort in silence. But silence doesn't save relationships. It buries them. Noah talked about work deadlines, his niece's obsession with Lego castles, and his plan to take a sabbatical next spring. It was normal conversation, something Ethan had long made me forget how to have. I laughed more than I expected to that night. Real laughter, not the kind you fake to keep the peace. I realized healing doesn't always start with apologies. Sometimes it starts with space. Later, in my room, I picked up my phone. 42 missed notifications. 23 from Ethan. 5 from his sister. 2 unknown numbers. I scrolled through them all quietly, not out of anger, but observation. Like reading the remnants of a story I no longer wanted to finish. "Ethan, you're making me look stupid." "Ethan, you don't have to do this." "Ethan, please answer." "Jenna's crying." "You're scaring people." That last one made me laugh out loud. The idea that my silence was more terrifying than his manipulation. I put the phone down and looked out the window. The pool lights shimmered below, soft blue ripples in the night. Somewhere, a group was laughing. For the first time in a long time, I didn't envy anyone. I didn't feel lonely. I felt present. When I turned off the light, the room didn't feel cold. It felt peaceful, the kind of peace that doesn't ask for forgiveness. That night, as I drifted to sleep, I realized that love had never been the problem. My definition of it was, and redefining it began right here. In silence, with my phone turned face down and the sound of ocean waves outside my window, instead of a man trying to rewrite my sanity. Morning sunlight poured into the resort room, like a spotlight I hadn't asked for. The sheets were crisp, the air smelled faintly of lavender and salt, and for a moment, I forgot what day it was. My phone was still silent on the nightstand, flipped face down. I didn't want to ruin the stillness by touching it. When I finally picked it up, the screen was a battlefield. Missed calls, messages, voicemails. Ethan's name, over and over, like he was trying to pull me back through the pixels. The messages began politely enough. Ethan. Hey, I just want to talk. Ethan. You're not answering. Is everything okay? Then came the shift. Ethan. Are you with him? Ethan. Wow, really mature. Ethan. If you wanted to get back at me, congratulations. It amazed me how quickly love turns into accusation when accountability enters the room. Downstairs, Noah was waiting at the poolside bar, holding 2 coffees and pretending not to notice my face. Rough morning, he asked. Not rough, just repetitive, I said. Same conversation, different disguise. He nodded like he understood without needing details. That was Noah's gift. He didn't need to invade to care. We spent the afternoon near the beach. The water glimmered under the sun. Children laughed somewhere in the distance. And for the first time in years, I felt invisible in the best possible way. No one was watching. No one was judging. No one was rewriting my emotions in real time. Around midday, my phone vibrated again. This time, a notification from social media. Ethan had posted something. A photo of a half-empty wine glass, captioned, "Some people mistake freedom for disrespect." I stared at it for a while, not because it hurt, but because it was predictable. That was Ethan's real addiction. Control over the story. If he couldn't reach me directly, he'd reach the audience instead. The comments came fast. Friends from his circle, people I barely knew. Stay strong, man. She doesn't deserve you. Some people don't know what loyalty means. And there it was. The oldest trick in the book. The man plays the victim, and the woman becomes the villain before she even opens her mouth. Noah noticed me scrolling. He's posting, isn't he? Yeah, I said. He's creating the sequel to a movie I stopped acting in. He smiled gently. Then let him film it alone. That afternoon, we booked spa appointments. Separate rooms, separate names. When I lay down on the massage table, I felt the tension in my body unwind like old rope. The therapist's voice was soft, her hands firm, her presence grounding. She had no idea she was massaging out 3 years of confusion disguised as love. Later, by the pool again, I opened my phone. The notifications had slowed down. I thought maybe he'd given up, until I saw a message from an unfamiliar number. Jenna, I don't know what game you're playing, but it's cruel. You've humiliated him. He doesn't deserve this. I read it twice, not out of shock, but to appreciate the irony. The woman who shared stolen laughter and private messages with my boyfriend was now lecturing me on decency. I typed one sentence back. You two should start a podcast. How to miss the point. Then I blocked her. When you start saying no, people hear it as aggression because they were used to your compliance. That's what was happening now. I wasn't doing anything dramatic. I was simply not obeying. And for people like Ethan and Jenna, that was the real betrayal. Evening arrived like an exhale. Noah and I ate dinner outside under string lights that swayed gently in the ocean breeze. A live guitarist played something slow, and for once, I didn't feel the need to fill silence with conversation. I caught myself laughing, really laughing, at one of his jokes about hotel prices and bad room service wine. My laughter startled me. It felt unfamiliar, like hearing an old recording of your own voice. When I got back to my room that night, I had 20 unread messages again, but the tone had changed once more. Softer now, remorse wrapped around control. Ethan, can we talk? Please, Ethan. I get it. You wanted me to feel what you felt. Ethan, I see now how it looked. But this is cruel, Lauren. You're better than this. Cruel. That word again. The one used when a woman starts setting boundaries. The one that pretends empathy is only valid when it protects the other person's ego. I didn't respond. I simply turned the phone face down again. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about something my therapist once said. Abusers don't lose control. They lose their audience. Ethan wasn't panicking because he loved me. He was panicking because he'd lost control of the narrative. He'd always been good at making me doubt my reactions, twisting everything until I felt guilty for feeling hurt. But this time, I wasn't explaining. I wasn't defending. I wasn't even angry. I was quiet. And that to him was unforgivable. When I finally drifted off to sleep, the last thought I had wasn't about him. It was about me, the version of myself that was slowly coming back. The one who used to exist before explanations became my love language. In the morning, I would wake up to new messages, new pleas, maybe new threats, but none of them would matter because something inside me had already clicked. A small permanent truth. I didn't want revenge. I wanted relief. And that's something Ethan could never understand. Because people who live off control think peace looks like punishment. The first thing I saw when I opened my phone Monday morning wasn't a message. It was a headline on my own feed. Ethan had gone public. Within minutes, the comments began flooding in. "You're better off, man. She sounds toxic. Good riddance. Some women just love attention." It didn't make me angry. It made me tired. Tired of how easily empathy is weaponized when a man crafts a good story. Tired of how strangers will always believe the calm liar over the emotional truth teller. I scrolled through his post like I was reading someone else's obituary. Not of a person, but of the version of me he'd killed with his narrative. Then came the familiar names. "Jenna, of course. Proud of you for speaking your truth," she wrote, adding a heart emoji. The irony was so thick, I almost laughed. And then his sister, Amber. "You did everything you could." It was clear. The campaign had begun. Noah found me sitting by the pool, staring at my phone. He didn't have to ask. He'd already seen the post. "You okay?" he asked softly. "I should be furious," I said. "But all I feel is detached. Like I'm watching a play I already know the ending to." He leaned back in his chair, sunglasses reflecting the pool's light. People like him need an audience. You leaving ruined his script, so now he's rewriting it. That made sense. Ethan wasn't trying to reach me anymore. He was trying to recover his image. Control through perception. It was his favorite language. I spent the next hour reading message requests. Strangers, mutual friends, co-workers who'd read his version and wanted my side. I didn't respond to any of them, but one message did stand out. From Amber. "Lauren, I don't know what to believe. He's saying you're unstable, that you planned that trip with Noah to humiliate him. Mom's upset. Please just tell me what happened." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote back simply, "Amber, I didn't humiliate anyone. I just stopped apologizing." 10 minutes later, she replied, "That actually sounds like something he'd hate. I believe you." That tiny message, "I believe you," felt more healing than any apology I'd ever received from Ethan. Later that evening, Noah scrolled through his phone and raised an eyebrow. "You want me to say something?" I shook my head. "No, let him perform. Eventually people get tired of sequels." But Ethan didn't. By Tuesday, he'd posted again. This time, a carousel of photos. The two of us smiling on past vacations. A handwritten note I'd left on his birthday. And a screenshot of one of my messages from months ago. "I just want us to be okay," the caption read. "Some people forget who was there for them when no one else was." That's what abusers do. They recycle your own tenderness as proof of your guilt. By evening, the comments had turned uglier. "She's heartless." Imagine doing this to someone who loved you. Another modern woman ruining real relationships. Noah finally sighed and set his phone down. "That's enough. What are you doing?" I asked, setting the record straight. An hour later, under Ethan's post, a new comment appeared. From Noah. "For the record, we booked separate rooms. She spent the entire weekend venting. eating overpriced nachos, and rediscovering her spine. Maybe look in a mirror before you post. It was short, simple, devastatingly effective. The ripple was instant. People started deleting their comments. A few even messaged me privately to apologize for believing him. The silence that followed was better than any public victory. Ethan didn't delete his post, but he edited it. The caption changed from heartbreak to healing. The comments froze. And then, nothing. That night, I sat on the balcony, phone in hand, scrolling through the aftermath. The moonlight painted everything silver, clean. I thought about replying, thought about sharing my own screenshots, my own proof. But then I realized, truth doesn't beg for attention. It just waits. So I posted one thing, a photo of the ocean. Caption: when someone calls your piece revenge, you know they were feeding off your chaos. Within an hour, it had more likes than any of my posts with him ever did. It wasn't viral. It was vindication. Quiet, private, sacred. Ethan texted me that night, "You win." Happy. I typed back, "It was never a competition. You just mistook control for love." Then I blocked him again. The next morning, Noah knocked on my door with breakfast, pancakes, and a small smile. "Looks like the internet finally shut up," he said. I nodded, sipping my coffee. That's the thing about silence. People think it's weakness. But if you wait long enough, it becomes proof. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like defending my truth. I was simply living it. When I got back to Seattle, the sky looked washed out, the way it always does after a storm that never really ends. The drive from the airport felt heavier than I expected. Every building, every street corner was a reminder of how many versions of myself had lived here. The hopeful one, the apologetic one, the one who mistook survival for commitment. Ethan's car was already in the driveway when I pulled up. I wasn't surprised. I had known he'd be waiting. Control doesn't fade easily. It lingers in doorways and inboxes, disguised as unfinished business. I parked across the street, cut the engine, and sat for a full minute before stepping out. The air was sharp with the smell of rain and cut grass. The house looked exactly the same. Trimmed hedges, porch light still flickering. Our once shared plant, Mr. Fern, drooping behind the window like a silent witness. Inside, the lights were dim. The table was set with candles and our old anniversary china. Soft music played, the same playlist from our first road trip. It was a scene straight from his memory, carefully reconstructed to lure me back into it. He appeared from the kitchen, eyes tired but rehearsed. "Lauren," he said, voice low, almost gentle, like I was a wild animal he was trying not to startle. "Ethan, you look good." "I am good," I said. He gestured toward the table. "I thought we could talk, maybe have a glass of wine." "I don't drink wine with people who try to rewrite my story," I said, hanging my keys on the hook. "But you can talk. I'll listen." He sighed, rubbing his temples like he was the one who'd been hurt. "I lost it, okay? I panicked. Seeing you with him, it broke me. I said things I didn't mean." I folded my arms. "You mean the posts, the half-truths, or the part where you turned my silence into a scandal?" He looked down. "You made me look like a fool, Lauren. Everyone saw those photos. Jenna was humiliated. You didn't have to do that. Forgive me if I don't light a candle for her emotional recovery," I said. "She's been haunting this relationship for years. You just finally invited her in through the front door." His jaw tightened. "You're being cruel." "No," I said softly. Cruel is gaslighting someone until they question their own memory. Cruel is calling emotional neglect love and expecting applause for it. He shook his head. "You always twist everything. You think you're better than me now." I looked around the room. The photos, the folded blankets, the small tokens of our history. "No, Ethan, I'm just clearer." He stepped closer. "We can fix this." I stepped back. "You can't fix something that relied on me being broken." His voice cracked. desperation leaking through the control. You're throwing away 3 years. No, I said. I'm reclaiming them. The music shifted to something slower. He moved closer again, lowering his voice to that familiar, dangerous calm. You're overreacting, Jenna and I. It was innocent. You planned that trip to hurt me. Admit it. I met his eyes. You know what the difference is, Ethan. You did what you did to feed your ego. I did what I did to find my peace. He flinched, then laughed bitterly. You always need the last word. No, I said. I just finally have one. Silence filled the room. Thick, buzzing. The kind of silence that used to terrify me. But now it felt like proof that the spell was breaking. He finally said, almost whispering, You think you've won. This was never about winning, I replied. It was about seeing. You just can't stand the reflection. He slammed his hand against the door frame, the sound sharp and final. You think you can just walk away after everything I did for you. I picked up my bag. Everything you did to me, you mean? He blinked, caught off guard by the correction. I stayed, I said, my voice steady now. Through every manipulation, every dismissal, every time you made me feel like my emotions were a liability, I stayed because I thought love meant endurance. But love isn't endurance, Ethan. It's reciprocity, and you only ever gave when it benefited you. His expression softened for a moment, panic flickering beneath the surface. Lauren, please, don't do this. I already did. I walked to the door. My hand rested on the knob, but I turned once more. One day, you'll realize this wasn't about jealousy or revenge. It was about respect. I deserved it. You refused to see it. He didn't answer. His eyes darted to the floor, the way people look when they finally run out of excuses. I opened the door and stepped into the night. The air outside was cool and clean, the kind that feels like it's been waiting for you. Behind me, the candles flickered, their light dimming one by one as the door closed. On the porch, I breathed in deeply. Not a sigh, but a reset. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what silence might bring. Because silence, when it's yours, isn't emptiness. It's freedom. By the next morning, the storm had moved from my living room to my inbox. Control doesn't die quietly. It mutates. The first sign came during breakfast. A call from my manager. Lauren, he said cautiously, is everything okay at home? I froze mid-bite. Yes, why? He hesitated. Ethan called the office yesterday. Said you were having a mental health crisis. Asked for time off on your behalf. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The audacity was almost artistic. He'd weaponized concern, the kind of performance that wins sympathy while planting doubt. I managed to laugh quietly. I'm fine, I said. He's not my partner anymore, and he's not authorized to make that call. My manager exhaled, relieved. I figured. Just wanted to check with you directly. Thank you, I said, voice steady. And please note this, he doesn't speak for me. Not anymore. When I hung up, the silence of my apartment felt different. Not heavy, clean. That's the thing about clarity. Once you find it, even chaos sounds quieter. But Ethan wasn't done. 2 hours later, my phone started buzzing again. Notifications, mentions, tagged posts. He had gone public again. The caption this time was even worse. Some people mistake love for control. I gave everything. And in the end, I was the villain in her story. Attached was a carousel of screenshots. Carefully cropped arguments, text taken out of context, photos of us smiling with captions like, "What changed?" The comments section was a museum of pity. She must be unstable. You dodged a bullet, man. These modern women never appreciate loyalty. And then, Jenna. Of course. Proud of you for being vulnerable. Healing is messy, but it's worth it. It was like watching 2 actors audition for sainthood. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even comment. Instead, I opened my notes app and started collecting screenshots. dates, messages, the proof he never thought I'd need. Because truth doesn't scream, it archives. Later that afternoon, Amber called. Her voice trembled. "Lauren, I don't know what's real anymore," she said. "He's saying you cheated, that you were planning it for months." My mom's distraught. I sighed. "Amber, he's rewriting the story because he lost control of it. But here's the thing about stories. Receipts outlive revisions." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I believe you." That was all I needed. Not validation. Confirmation that not everyone was blind to his performance. An hour later, I saw a new comment appear under Ethan's post. It was from Noah. For the record, separate rooms. She spent the weekend trying to breathe again. Maybe look in a mirror before posting. The internet moved faster than guilt. Within minutes, people started deleting their comments. Some even apologized publicly. Others just went quiet. The online equivalent of shame. Ethan didn't respond. He deleted the post instead. By evening, Jenna had locked her account. The victory wasn't loud. It didn't trend. But it was complete. That night, I sat by my window with a cup of tea, scrolling through my screenshots one last time. They weren't revenge. They were reflection, evidence of what happens when truth stops whispering. Then I drafted one final post. Nothing emotional, nothing defensive, just one photo. The reflection of the city skyline through my window, captioned, "When you stop explaining, lies start sounding lonely." It wasn't about him anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice from the noise. The next morning, my phone was quiet. No calls, no text, no apologies disguised as ultimatums. For the first time in years, the silence didn't demand interpretation. It just was. His silence that followed wasn't empty. It was restorative. The kind of silence that hums softly. The kind that feels earned. A week after the confrontation, I moved out of the apartment. The place that once smelled like him, now just smelled like paint and lemon cleaner. I packed methodically. One memory at a time. One apology at a time. Photos came down first, then mugs. Then the blanket he always claimed was ours. By the time the movers arrived, the rooms echoed when I spoke. I stood in the doorway for a final moment, scanning the space where so much pretending had taken place. I wasn't mourning what we had. I was grieving what I tolerated. My new apartment was small. One bedroom, wide windows overlooking the city skyline. No trace of Ethan. No shared toothbrush by the sink. No voice asking why I was so sensitive. Just sunlight, empty space, and possibility. I placed Mr. Fern, our old plant, by the balcony. His leaves were limp, edges brown. "You've been through it too, huh?" I whispered, trimming the dead ends and pressing fresh soil around the roots. Within minutes, sunlight slid through the glass and hit the green just right. The leaves lifted slightly. A small miracle of recovery. That evening, I met Noah for coffee at a cafe near the waterfront. He'd shaved, looked rested. "How's freedom?" he asked. "Louder than I expected," I said. He grinned. "That's because you can finally hear yourself think." We talked about work, travel, small things. No analysis, no emotional autopsy. It was simple, clean. When we parted, he said, "Don't disappear into peace too much. The world still needs people like you who survived it." Back home, I unpacked boxes slowly. Books first, then candles, then the journal my therapist had given me. I opened to a blank page and wrote one sentence. Healing doesn't mean I forgive the story. It means I stopped starring in it. For days, I lived quietly. I worked, I cooked, I slept through the night. The world didn't collapse without Ethan in it. It expanded. On Wednesday, I got a text from Amber. He's in therapy now. Admitted everything. Said you were the only one who ever held him accountable. He's sorry. I thought you should know. I read it twice, then smiled faintly. Accountability wasn't revenge. It was evolution. And some people just evolve slower. I didn't reply. not out of spite, but because some closures don't need applause. That weekend, I took a walk through the park. Kids laughed, couples picnicked, the city hummed in its usual rhythm. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking through glass. I was just there. When I came home, I noticed Mr. Fern again. Greener now, taller, a survivor, like me. I brewed tea and sat on the balcony, watching the city fade into twilight. My phone was quiet on the table beside me. No pings, no explanations waiting to be drafted, just peace. I thought about Ethan, not with hate, but with distance. The way you think about a storm once it's passed. You remember its noise, not its shape. My therapist's words came back to me. You didn't lose love, Lauren. You lost confusion. There's a difference. She was right. Love can survive honesty. Confusion can't. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling into the night air. Somewhere below, a car horn echoed faintly. Life was happening, and this time, it didn't need my permission. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel watched, tested, or evaluated. I felt whole, not healed, healing, not done, becoming, and that was enough. Nights are different now, not quieter, just honest. The kind of quiet that no longer asks if I'm okay, because it knows I am. Sometimes I still hear his voice in my head. Soft, defensive, rehearsed. You're being insecure. It's not the same thing. Once upon a time, those words would have shattered me. I would have stayed up rewriting my reality to make them fit. Now, I answer back, not aloud, but in thought. You're right. It's not the same. Because I grew, and you didn't. My apartment glows with evening light. The city hums outside, alive, unbothered by my past. Mr. Fern is thriving on the balcony, green and alive again. I water him every morning, not because he reminds me of Ethan, but because he reminds me of endurance. How something can wilt and still come back stronger. I think about love differently now. It's not a test. Not a performance, not a story you have to edit to keep someone else comfortable. Love, the real kind, doesn't ask you to shrink for peace. It meets you at your full height. My therapist once asked, "Do you think he ever truly saw himself?" I said, "Maybe not then, but I think he does now." And he hates the view. That's closure, not revenge, just truth finally having the room to breathe. A few weeks ago, Noah sent me a photo from that same resort. The same pool, the same golden light, but he wasn't alone. His new girlfriend stood beside him, smiling, unguarded. The caption read, "This time it actually is romantic. Thanks for the introduction, Mirror Girl." I laughed, really laughed. For once, that memory didn't sting. It felt like part of a story that ended exactly how it was meant to. Not with bitterness, but with balance. The world didn't hand me peace. I built it piece by piece. Every boundary laid like brick. Every truth spoken like mortar. And somewhere along the way, the mirror stopped being something I was afraid to look into. It became proof. Proof that healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. You're free now. Before I sleep, I stand by the window and watch the city lights blink like pulse beats. I think about everyone who's been told they're too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. People who've learned to translate love through apology. To them, I'd say this: you are not difficult. You are detailed. And the right person will see those details as art, not inconvenience. As I turn off the lights, my reflection lingers faintly in the glass. Steady eyes, no ghost behind them. If Ethan taught me anything, it's this. People who love double standards will always call balance revenge. But mirrors don't lie. They just wait, patiently, for you to stop pretending. When they say it's not the same thing, they're right, because your honesty will always hit harder than their excuses.